Commander Kim Jae-won stood nervously at the entrance of the Talarian diplomatic hall. The massive doors, made of a strange blue-tinted metal, towered over her. After months of preparation, humanity's first official diplomatic mission to the Talarian homeworld was about to begin. "Remember your training," she whispered to herself, straightening her navy blue uniform. Earth's United Space Command had selected her specifically for this mission because of her background in xenobiology and her calm temperament. The doors slid open silently, revealing a large circular room filled with shallow pools of greenish liquid. The Talarians, tall amphibious beings with translucent skin that revealed complex circulatory systems beneath, stood in small groups around the room. Their large, multi-lidded eyes turned toward Jae-won as she entered. "Commander Kim Jae-won of Earth," announced her translator device. "Representative of the United Space Command." A Talarian with distinctive purple markings along its neck stepped forward. "I am Ren, Chief Ambassador of the Talarian Consensus. We welcome Earth's representative to our world." Jae-won bowed slightly. "Thank you, Ambassador Ren. I bring greetings and hopes for friendship from Earth." The formal introductions continued as Jae-won met each member of the Talarian diplomatic team. They were polite but distant, their expressions difficult to read on their alien faces. Later that evening, a special dinner was arranged to honor the Earth delegation. Jae-won sat at a low table beside Ambassador Ren, carefully sampling the strange but not unpleasant Talarian cuisine. The food was mostly algae-based, with subtle flavors that reminded her vaguely of the sea. "Your planet's communications indicated you have a husband," Ren said suddenly, the translator giving the alien's words a flat, mechanical tone. "This is a reproductive partner, correct?" Jae-won smiled. "Yes, my husband Minho is my life partner. We've been married for 5 years." "Married?" Ren's skin changed slightly, showing curiosity through color shifts. "This is a formal agreement to reproduce." "Well, no," Jae-won said, realizing she had stumbled into complex cultural territory. "Marriage is a commitment to share our lives. Having children is only one possible aspect of it." Ren's skin shifted again, this time to a deeper purple that Jae-won hadn't seen before. "I do not understand. If not for efficient reproduction, why form such bonds?" "For companionship," Jae-won explained. "For love, emotional support, pleasure." "Pleasure." The translator somehow conveyed Ren's confusion, despite its monotone delivery. "You engage in physical bonding for pleasure." The other Talarians at the table had stopped eating and were now focused intently on Jae-won. She realized she had accidentally captivated the entire room. "Yes," she said carefully. "Human intimacy has many purposes beyond reproduction. It strengthens emotional bonds between partners." Ambassador Ren's skin now pulsed with rapid color changes. "This concept is entirely foreign to us. Talarian reproduction is scheduled during optimal biological cycles. It is efficient, clinical, and separated from other social functions." Jae-won nodded, trying to be diplomatic. "Different species develop different social structures. That's what makes cultural exchange so valuable." "Indeed," Ren agreed, leaning forward with obvious interest. "Would you be willing to educate me further on this aspect of humanity? Our understanding of your species would benefit greatly." The other Talarians murmured in agreement, their skin shifting through various shades that Jae-won interpreted as excitement and curiosity. "I'd be happy to explain human relationships as part of our cultural exchange," she replied, though privately she wondered how she would explain the complexities of human love and intimacy to a species that approached reproduction like a medical procedure. The next morning, Jae-won was surprised to find a formal request from the Talarian Diplomatic Corps. They had scheduled a special session titled Human Bonding Behaviors and requested her as the primary speaker. This wasn't in the mission briefing, she muttered as she prepared her notes. Commander Park, her second-in-command, looked equally perplexed. "They seemed extremely interested," Park said. The liaison officer told me this session has 3 times the normal attendance of diplomatic meetings. When J1 entered the Talarian Learning Hall, she nearly stopped in her tracks. Hundreds of Talarians filled the amphitheater-like space, their skin shifting with eager anticipation. Ambassador Wren met her at the entrance. "Your topic has generated unprecedented interest, Commander. Even members of our science directorate have requested to attend." "I'll do my best," J1 promised, though her mouth felt suddenly dry. She began with the basics of human relationships: friendship, dating, marriage, and quickly found herself fielding dozens of questions. "You choose partners based on subjective attraction rather than genetic compatibility?" asked the Talarian scientist. "Sometimes relationships form without any intention of having children," questioned another. "Physical intimacy creates pleasurable sensations that strengthen your pair bonds," Wren asked, carefully documenting every answer. J1 explained as clearly as she could, occasionally checking her translator to ensure it was conveying the nuanced concepts correctly. "Yes, human intimacy involves both emotional and physical pleasure," she confirmed. "It's an important way we connect with our partners." The Talarians' reactions ranged from fascination to what seemed like shock. One elderly Talarian near the front had skin that remained stubbornly gray throughout the presentation, which J1 took as disapproval. As the session concluded, Ambassador Wren approached her with skin pulsing in excited purples and blues. "Commander Kim, your information has been most illuminating. The concept of physical bonding for pleasure rather than reproduction is revolutionary to us." Wren hesitated, then asked more quietly, "Would you be willing to provide more detailed information about these human practices?" "For scientific understanding, of course." J1 smiled diplomatically. "I'm happy to discuss human relationships at an appropriate level for cultural exchange, Ambassador. Perhaps we could organize a series of discussions about different aspects of human social bonds." "Wait." Wren's skin flickered with intensity. "You do this for pleasure, truly, and it enhances your emotional connection. This is so different from our experience. You must teach me more about how humans view intimacy." Looking at the eager alien diplomat, J1 realized her mission to Talaria would involve cultural exchange far more personal than she had ever anticipated. What had begun as a standard diplomatic contact was evolving into something much more meaningful, a chance for 2 very different species to learn about each other's most fundamental experiences of connection. The grand lecture hall of the Talarian Science Academy had never been so full. Talarians of all ranks and professions crowded the tiered seating, their translucent skin shifting through shades of blue and purple with excitement. At the center of the stage stood Commander Kim Jae-won, now unofficially known as Earth's Relationship Ambassador. "Today we will discuss the concept of dating," Jae-won began, her voice calm despite her nervousness. She had never expected to become an expert on human intimacy for an alien species, but here she was, 3 weeks into what the Talarians had officially named the Human Connection Studies. Ambassador Wren sat in the front row, recording every word with a small device. Since their dinner conversation, Wren had become J1's constant companion, hungry for knowledge about human relationships. "Dating is how humans get to know potential partners," J1 explained. "We spend time together doing enjoyable activities to see if we're compatible." A Talarian scientist raised a webbed hand. "You determine reproductive compatibility through recreational activities. This seems inefficient." J1 smiled patiently. "We're not checking for reproductive compatibility. We're seeing if we enjoy each other's company, if we make each other happy." The concept of happiness as a factor in partner selection caused a ripple of color changes throughout the audience. Talarians reproduced through carefully arranged pairings based on genetic profiles. The idea of choosing partners based on something as subjective as happiness was revolutionary to them. "Please provide examples of these dating activities," Wren requested, leaning forward eagerly. "Well, couples might share meals together, watch entertainment, take walks, dance," interrupted another Talarian. The synchronized movement ritual. We believe this was a territorial display. J1 laughed. No, for humans dancing can be very romantic. Partners hold each other close, move together to music. It's about physical closeness and shared rhythm. The audience's skin flickered rapidly as they tried to process this information. One elderly Talarian in formal scientific robes stood up. Commander Kim, I am Director Su of Biological Sciences. You claim these activities create pleasure without reproduction. How is this evolutionarily advantageous? J1 considered her answer carefully. Human connection helps us build strong social bonds. These bonds help us survive as a cooperative species. The pleasure encourages us to maintain these important relationships. Director Su's skin turned a skeptical gray. Fascinating theory. Perhaps inefficient, but intriguing. After the lecture, J1 found herself surrounded by curious Talarians. Their questions became increasingly personal. Do humans feel physical pleasure from simple touch? How do you select acceptable physical appearances in potential mates? Is emotional attachment a prerequisite for physical intimacy? She answered as honestly as she could while maintaining appropriate diplomatic boundaries. The Talarians absorbed every word like sponges. Later that evening, Ambassador Ren invited J1 to observe a traditional Talarian meal ceremony. They sat in a quiet chamber with shallow pools where Talarians soaked their sensitive lower appendages while consuming nutrient-rich alga. Your lectures have caused quite a stir, Ren said, skin shifting to a confidential purple. Some younger Talarians are experimenting with your human concepts. Is that causing problems? J1 asked, concerned. Not problems. Changes. Ren's skin rippled thoughtfully. 2 research assistants were observed holding appendages in the laboratory yesterday. When questioned, they claimed to be dating in the human style. J1 tried not to smile. I hope I haven't disrupted your social order. On the contrary, Ren replied. I find myself fascinated by human intimacy. We Talarians pride ourselves on our rational approach to life, but watching you speak about human connection, I wonder what we might be missing. Ren hesitated, then continued. Could you explain again about holding hands? This seems like a simple behavior, yet you describe it as meaningful. J1 extended her hand. Sometimes it's easier to demonstrate. May I? Ren looked at J1's hand with obvious nervousness, then slowly extended a webbed appendage. Carefully, J1 placed her palm against Ren's. The Talarian's skin immediately flushed bright blue. The skin contact creates a pleasant sensation. Ren asked, voice unusually quiet. For humans, yes. It's comforting, creates feelings of trust and connection. Ren withdrew slowly. I felt something unusual. A neural response I cannot categorize. The next morning, J1 found a new request in her communication system. The Talarian Science Council wished her to speak about emotional intimacy, a topic that had never been studied in Talarian culture. The lecture hall was even more crowded than before. J1 noticed that several pairs of Talarians were sitting unusually close to each other. Emotional intimacy, she began, is about sharing your true self with another person. Your thoughts, feelings, fears, and dreams. We do not typically share personal data outside of scientific contexts, a Talarian noted. Humans find that sharing our inner lives creates deep bonds, J1 explained. When someone knows you completely and accepts you, it creates a powerful connection. Director Su interrupted. This sounds dangerously inefficient, focusing on individual feelings rather than collective progress. From the front row, Ambassador Ren stood up. With respect, Director, perhaps efficiency isn't everything. I've been studying human connection patterns, and their society shows remarkable cohesion despite their individualistic approach. This public disagreement between officials sent a shock through the audience, their skin flickering in surprise. Talarians rarely contradicted each other, especially not in public settings. After the lecture, J1 found Ren waiting outside. Your words today affected me deeply, Commander. I've never considered that sharing personal thoughts could be valuable. Would you like to try? J1 asked gently. Humans often become friends by sharing something about themselves. Ren's skin shifted to a vulnerable pale blue. I have always felt different from other Talarians. I am curious about experiences beyond pure rationality. Is this abnormal? Not at all, J1 smiled. Curiosity about feelings is very human. Human, Ren repeated, as if testing the word. Perhaps there is a little human in all of us, waiting to be discovered. As the cultural exchange continued, J1 noticed small changes throughout Talarian society. Couples could be seen sitting together in public gardens, sometimes with their appendages touching. Young Talarians formed discussion groups about emotions and relationships. The stiff formality that had characterized her early interactions began to soften. What had begun as a simple diplomatic mission was becoming something much more profound. J1 realized she wasn't just teaching Talarians about human intimacy. She was helping them discover new dimensions of their own existence, possibilities for connection they had never imagined before. Commander Kim Jo-won woke to an urgent message flashing on her room terminal. She had been on the Talarian homeworld for 6 weeks now, and her lectures on human relationships had become the most attended events in the history of human-Talarian relations. The message was from Ambassador Ren, requesting her immediate presence at the Central Governance Hall. "This can't be good," she muttered, quickly putting on her uniform. Had she finally crossed some cultural line? The rapid changes in Talarian social behavior had been unexpected, and she worried that conservative elements might be pushing back. When she arrived at the imposing crystal structure that housed Talarian leadership, J1 was surprised to see a crowd of young Talarians outside. Their skin displayed patterns she now recognized as excitement and curiosity. Several pairs stood close together, their appendages touching in the way she had described in her lectures. "Commander Kim," one called out, "your teachings have opened our eyes." J1 smiled nervously and entered the building, where Ambassador Ren was waiting with skin flickering between purple and blue. "I apologize for the urgency," Ren said, leading her down a long corridor. "The High Council has requested your presence." There have been developments. They entered a circular chamber where 7 elderly Talarians sat in a semicircle. Their skin was mostly gray and still, the Talarian equivalent of a serious, stern expression. In the center stood a young Talarian couple, holding appendages and standing very close together. "Commander Kim," said the central figure, whom J1 recognized as High Counselor Tak. "Thank you for joining us. We are experiencing an unprecedented situation." J1 bowed respectfully. "I'm happy to help in any way I can, Counselor." Tak gestured to the young couple. "These two work in our atmospheric research division. They have requested permission to form a permanent pair bond, not for reproduction, but for what they are calling emotional fulfillment. They cite your teachings as inspiration." The young Talarian's skin flushed bright blue when J1 looked at them. She recognized this now as the Talarian equivalent of a blush. "We wish to be together like humans are," one of them said. "Not just for reproduction cycles, but always." The other added, "We experience joy in each other's presence. This is not part of traditional Talarian pairing, but it feels right." J1 looked at the council, unsure of what they expected from her. In human culture, we value these kinds of emotional connections. They strengthen our social bonds. "That may be true for humans," one council member said, "but Talarians have always separated reproduction from social functioning. It is efficient and avoids emotional complications." Another council member leaned forward. "Yet these young ones are not alone. Similar requests have emerged across multiple districts. Some Talarians are engaging in physical contact during non-reproductive periods. Others are forming exclusive social units. Some are even decorating their living spaces with items chosen by their partners." "Decorating?" J1 asked, surprised by this detail. "Yes," Tak confirmed. After your lecture on how humans create shared living spaces with their partners, some Talarians began selecting objects based on aesthetic preference rather than pure functionality. Ambassador Wren stepped forward. If I may speak, counselors, I have studied human relationships closely these past weeks. While their practices may seem inefficient by our standards, they appear to provide benefits we had not considered. The council chamber grew quiet as Wren continued. Humans form deep bonds that support their mental health. They collaborate more effectively when emotionally connected. Perhaps there is wisdom in their approach that we have overlooked in our pursuit of pure efficiency. Counselor Tech's skin shifted thoughtfully. Commander Kim, some conservative voices claim your teachings are disrupting our social order. Young Talarians are spending non-productive time in each other's company. Some have requested changes to work schedules to accommodate what they call dating. J1 felt a wave of concern. The last thing she wanted was to cause problems in Talarian society. I apologize if our cultural exchange has created difficulties. That was never my intention. To her surprise, Tuck's skin changed to a color she hadn't seen before, a warm, golden tone. On the contrary, Commander, I requested this meeting to inform you that the Council has been observing these changes with great interest. Tuck stood and moved closer. While some find these developments concerning, others of us see potential. Our society has achieved remarkable technological advancement, but we have perhaps overlooked certain aspects of personal fulfillment. Another council member added, our scientists have recorded interesting neurological patterns in Talarians who engage in these new bonding behaviors. They experience increased production of certain chemicals associated with creativity and problem-solving. Really? J1 asked, fascinated. Yes, Tak confirmed. And psychological surveys indicate improved mental wellness among those experimenting with human-style relationships. This was unexpected. After the council meeting, J1 walked with Wren through the city center. She noticed small changes everywhere. Talarians walked closer together. Some of the sterile public spaces now had decorative elements. A group of young Talarians sat in a circle, actively sharing personal stories, something that would have been considered strange just weeks before. I never expected my lectures to have such an impact, J1 said. Wren's skin rippled with amusement. Humans have given us something we didn't know we were missing. For generations, we believed that removing emotion from reproduction was progress. Now we wonder if we eliminated something essential along the way. They stopped at a newly created public space where Talarians were engaged in a modified version of human dancing, not touching, but moving in synchronized patterns with partners. The council has approved a formal research initiative, Wren explained. Volunteers will explore these new social behaviors in a structured setting. They're calling it the Human Pleasure Study. J1 raised her eyebrows. That name might give humans the wrong impression. Wren's skin flushed blue. Perhaps, but it accurately describes what we're investigating, the human concept that pleasure and connection have value beyond reproduction. As they continued walking, a Talarian couple approached them. They seemed nervous, their skin shifting rapidly. Commander Kim, one said, we attended your lecture on human courtship rituals. We have been practicing dating and find it most rewarding. Would you approve of our technique? J1 smiled kindly. There's no right or wrong way. The important thing is that you enjoy each other's company. The couple's skin brightened. We do. We have discovered 17 shared interests and find our productivity increases by 22% when working together. J1 suppressed a laugh at the very Talarian way of expressing affection through statistics, but she could see the genuine connection between them, so different from the formal interactions she had first observed. Something remarkable is happening here, she told Wren as they watched the couple depart, their appendages brushing against each other. Your people are discovering something new, but it's coming from within them, not just from human examples. Wren's skin turned the golden color she had seen on Counselor Tak. Perhaps this is what true cultural exchange should be, not just learning about others, but discovering new aspects of ourselves. 3 months into Commander Kim Jae-won's diplomatic mission, the Cultural Exchange Center had been transformed. Once a sterile, formal meeting space, it now hummed with activity. Colorful decorations hung from the walls. An entirely new concept for Talarians, who had previously valued only function over form. At the center of the room stood a large sign, "The Human Pleasure Study," exploring connection beyond reproduction. J1 watched with fascination as 30 Talarian volunteers gathered for the first official day of the experiment. Commander Kim. Ren approached, skin glowing with excitement. Today we begin formal research into human-style relationships. Our volunteers have been carefully selected from different age groups and professions. J1 smiled. I'm honored that your people find our customs so interesting. What exactly will the study involve? We have created Talarian versions of human dating activities, Ren explained, gesturing around the room. Shared meal stations, conversation areas, and even a movement space based on your concept of dancing. The volunteers were divided into pairs, each given instructions for different relationship-building activities. J1 tried not to laugh as she watched Talarians awkwardly attempt to follow human dating protocols, translated into forms that made sense for their physiology. At one station, pairs were sharing nutrition supplements while asking personal questions from a prepared list. What memory brings you satisfaction? A female Talarian asked her partner, reading from her card. Her male partner's skin shifted uncomfortably. I find satisfaction in completing work efficiently, he answered stiffly. The card says to share something more personal, she prompted. The male hesitated, then his skin softened to a gentle blue. When I was newly matured, I observed a rare atmospheric phenomenon. Triple lightning over the eastern sea. I sometimes think about it during work cycles. Is that personal enough? The female's skin brightened. I also enjoy atmospheric phenomena. Perhaps we could observe weather patterns together sometime. J1 moved to another station where Talarian pairs were attempting a modified form of dancing. Without the flexibility of human joints, they had created their own version. Synchronized color changes across their translucent skin, creating rippling patterns between partners. This is remarkable, said Chief Scientist Lin, who was recording data nearby. We're measuring neurochemical responses during these activities. The results are unlike anything we've seen before. What are you finding? J1 asked. Increased production of bonding hormones, heightened neural activity in regions associated with pleasure and creativity. Lin explained. Most interestingly, partners who successfully synchronize their movements show matching brain wave patterns temporarily. Across the room, a pair of Talarians were engaged in a gift exchange activity. They had each selected an object to present to their partner. Another completely foreign concept in Talarian society, where personal possessions were minimal and purely functional. I selected this for you, a young Talarian said, presenting what looked like a small crystal to her partner. It has an interesting molecular structure that reminded me of your work in chemical engineering. Her partner's skin flushed deep blue with surprise. You selected this based on knowledge of my professional interests. This is thoughtful. The concept of thoughtfulness itself seemed new to them. By the end of the day, the scientists were busily analyzing their data while the volunteers gathered to share their experiences. I found the personal question exchange most challenging, one Talarian reported. But after 7.3 minutes, I began to experience a pleasant sensation when my partner showed interest in my responses. The synchronized movement created an unexpected feeling of connection. Another added, I could anticipate my partner's pattern changes before they occurred. Most efficient. J1 smiled at their attempts to quantify these new emotional experiences. Even as they discovered feelings, they tried to categorize them scientifically. As the volunteers departed, Ambassador Ren approached J1 with another Talarian she didn't recognize. Commander, this is Dr. Ta, our leading neurologist. He has a rather unusual request. Dr. Ta's skin showed nervous color patterns. Commander Kim, We have collected fascinating data today, but I believe we are missing something fundamental. The volunteers are attempting human behaviors without understanding the internal experience that motivates them. What do you mean? J1 asked. They are going through motions without emotional context, Dr. Todd explained. I would like to experience a more authentic understanding. Would you be willing to demonstrate the human concept of friendship with me? As a scientific study, of course. J1 was surprised but intrigued. I'd be happy to. Human friendship involves sharing experiences, supporting each other, and enjoying each other's company. Yes, I understand the definition, Dr. Ta said, but not the experience. Could we perhaps engage in a friendship activity for research purposes? J1 suggested they take a walk through the botanical gardens the next day. When she met Dr. Ta there, she was surprised to find him carrying a small container. I have brought a nutritional supplement to share, he explained seriously. My research indicates this is common in human friendship rituals. We call that a picnic, J1 said with a smile. And yes, sharing food is a way humans bond. As they walked through the gardens, J1 told stories about Earth, asked questions about Ta's life, and gradually saw the stiff scientist relax. By the end of their walk, he was asking questions about human emotions, sharing his own observations, and even made what J1 recognized as an attempt at humor. This experience has been most educational, Dr. Ta said as they finished. I believe I now understand why humans value these connections. There is a certain satisfaction in being known by another. That's exactly it, J1 agreed. Friendship enriches our lives. The next day, J1 was surprised to see Dr. Tai at the research center, enthusiastically explaining his friendship experiment to the other scientists. Soon, other Talarian researchers were requesting similar cultural exchange experiences with the human delegation. Ambassador Ren found J1 in her office later that week. The preliminary results of our study are causing quite a stir, Ren said, skin pulsing with excitement. Participants are reporting improved sleep cycles, increased work satisfaction, and novel thought patterns. That's wonderful, J1 replied. What's most remarkable, Ren continued, is that many participants are continuing these behaviors outside the research setting. They're forming what you might call friendships and romantic attachments. Looking out the window, J1 could see a pair of Talarians sitting by a reflecting pool, their appendages touching, engaged in conversation. Another pair walked slowly through the garden, stopping to observe plants together. It's like watching the dawn of a new aspect of your civilization, she said softly. Ren's skin turned a thoughtful blue. For centuries, we prided ourselves on our logical, efficient approach to life. We thought emotions were primitive, something we had evolved beyond. Now I wonder if we were wrong all along. Not wrong, J1 suggested, just incomplete. Logic and emotion can coexist. They do in humans, though sometimes not very gracefully. Commander, Ren said, skin shifting to a color J1 had never seen before, I believe I've developed what humans would call fondness for you. Is that an appropriate thing to share? J1 smiled. Between friends, it's very appropriate. As the experiment continued, Talarian society seemed to bloom with new possibilities. The rigid efficiency remained, but alongside it grew something new, the capacity for connection, for pleasure, and for relationships that existed for their own sake. 1 year had passed since Commander Kim J1 first arrived on the Talarian homeworld. Her diplomatic shuttle descended through the atmosphere, giving her a view of a planet noticeably changed since her last visit. 6 months ago, she had returned to Earth to deliver her reports on the remarkable cultural exchange that had transformed Talarian society. Now she was back to formalize a permanent alliance between the two worlds. The landing platform was filled with Talarians, their skin shimmering with welcoming colors. Among the official greeters, J1 immediately spotted Ambassador Ren, standing at the front with another Talarian close by their side. As she stepped off the shuttle, A group of young Talarians approached with small objects in their hands. They presented them to her, decorative crystals in various colors. Gift-giving, once a foreign concept, had become common practice. Commander Kim, one young Talarian, said, "These were grown in appreciation of your teachings." J1 accepted the gifts with a bow. "Thank you. I'm touched by your kindness." Ambassador Ren stepped forward, skin glowing with a warm golden hue that J1 now recognized as happiness. "Commander Kim, welcome back to Talaria. Much has changed since you left us." "I can see that," J1 replied, looking around at the landing area. What had once been a purely functional space now featured decorative elements and comfortable seating areas where Talarians gathered in pairs and small groups. Ren gestured to the Talarian standing nearby. "This is Mun, my chosen companion." Mun's skin rippled in greeting. "Commander Kim, it is an honor to meet you. Ren speaks of you often." J1 tried to hide her surprise. When she left, Ren had been interested in human relationships as a scientific curiosity. Now the ambassador had a partner, not a reproductive match, but a chosen companion. "The pleasure is mine," J1 replied warmly. "I'm eager to see how things have changed." As they traveled from the spaceport to the city center, J1 was amazed by the transformations. The once stark and utilitarian Talarian architecture now incorporated aesthetic elements. Public spaces included what Ren called bonding gardens, areas specifically designed for Talarians to spend leisure time together. Our scientists initially worried that these relationship behaviors would decrease productivity, Ren explained as they passed a garden where Talarian couples sat together beside shimmering pools. "Instead, we've measured a 27% increase in creative problem solving and a 32% reduction in work-related stress disorders." The diplomatic center had been redesigned as well. The formal meeting hall now included comfortable seating arranged to encourage conversation rather than presentations. "We've created a new vocabulary," Mun explained as they entered. "We had no words for concepts like affection, tenderness, or love. Now our language is expanding to describe these experiences." A high council had organized a welcoming ceremony, unlike anything J1 had seen during her previous visit. Rather than formal speeches, Talarians performed a synchronized color-changing display, their version of dance, while others shared personal stories about how relationship behaviors had enriched their lives. Counselor Tak, now visibly older but with brightly patterned skin, addressed the gathering. "1 year ago, Commander Kim introduced us to concepts we had never considered. Many feared these ideas would weaken our society. Instead, they have strengthened us in unexpected ways." Tak gestured to charts displayed on the walls, scientific data presented alongside artistic interpretations of emotional states. "Our scientists report improved mental health, decreased social conflicts, and enhanced creativity across our population. Our society remains efficient, but has gained new dimensions of experience." After the ceremony, J1 walked with Ren and Mun through the city center. Everywhere she looked, she saw evidence of change. Talarian couples held appendages openly. Small groups gathered to share meals together, not just for nutrition, but for social connection. Some Talarians wore decorative items, another concept they had adapted from humans. "I never expected this level of transformation," J1 admitted. "I thought perhaps a few Talarians might experiment with human concepts, but this is a cultural revolution." Ren's skin rippled thoughtfully. "Many of our older citizens were resistant at first, some still are. But even they cannot deny the positive outcomes we've measured." They stopped at a new structure that hadn't existed during J1's previous visit, a circular building with a sign identifying it as the Center for Relationship Studies. "This is now our most active research facility," Mun explained. "Scientists from every field are studying how emotional connection affects everything from brain development to social cooperation." Inside, Talarian researchers worked in pairs and groups, their skin patterns synchronized in ways that showed their close connections. One team was mapping brain activity during various bonding behaviors. Another studied how shared experiences affected memory formation. "We've discovered something remarkable," Wren said, leading J1 to a quiet corner where they could talk privately. When Talarians form close bonds, they can sometimes develop a limited form of empathic connection, an ability to sense their partner's emotional state through subtle skin pattern changes too fine for conscious recognition. "That's extraordinary," J1 replied. "Humans have often wondered about telepathic abilities, but we've never developed anything similar." "It seems each species has its own gifts," Mun observed. "You taught us about emotional connection. We discovered it was already within us, just dormant." That evening, a special dinner was held in J1's honor. Unlike the formal, silent meals of her first visit, this gathering was filled with conversation and what she now recognized as Talarian laughter, a rippling of skin patterns accompanied by soft clicking sounds. Many Talarians approached her throughout the evening to share their experiences. "My work partner and I formed a friendship bond after your lectures," one scientist told her. "We now spend recreation time together. Our research has improved by 41% since this change. My chosen companion and I have created a shared living space," another Talarian shared. "We selected decorations that please us both. This concept of creating beauty together brings unexpected satisfaction." Near the end of the evening, J1 found herself alone with Wren while Mun spoke with other guests. "Your society has embraced these changes so completely," J1 observed. "I'm amazed at how quickly everything has transformed." Wren's skin shifted to a thoughtful blue. "Perhaps we were ready for this change without knowing it. For generations, we focused on technological advancement and efficient reproduction. We believed we had evolved beyond the need for emotional connection. And now?" J1 asked. "Now we understand that efficiency isn't everything," Wren replied, watching as Mun approached across the room. Wren's skin glowed with a warm color that needed no translation. "Your species taught us that there is value in connection for its own sake. That pleasure and companionship are not inefficient indulgences, but essential aspects of a fulfilling existence." As J1 prepared to leave the next day, beginning a new chapter in Earth-Talarian relations, she watched Talarian couples walking together in the morning light, their skin patterns synchronized in unity. What had begun as a simple cultural explanation had blossomed into something profound, a rediscovery of aspects of themselves that had been dormant for generations. She thought about what she would report to Earth's United Space Command. How could she explain that her greatest diplomatic achievement had nothing to do with treaties or trade agreements, but with introducing an alien species to the simple human concept that connection, intimacy, and love were valuable for their own sake? As her shuttle lifted off, J1 looked down at the transformed world below. She had come to teach Talarians about humans, but in the process, they had discovered something fundamental about themselves: the capacity for pleasure beyond function, for relationships beyond reproduction, and for a kind of happiness they had never known they were missing.